Let's see how this actually works with the arm switch. Scroll down to and select mix 1. And scroll down to where it says normal and click that. Scroll to the source, the left side of the arrow. Click on the INH or inhibit and scroll to C, which is going to be our arm switch. Click again to confirm. Scroll right once to the target and click. Scroll to GER, G-E-R, or gear, I guess, which is the slightly inconvenient name of channel number 5. And remember here that channel 5 in the Spectrum speak is the gear channel, but it's aux1 in Betaflight. Click to confirm. Now we're going to set the rates. And this needs a little background, not least because it's not even mentioned, the rates, in the D6 manual. In fact, the manual includes nothing at all on the multi-rotor type. Anyway, as you saw when I set up the group switch, switches are set up to signal a certain percentage of maximum travel at each of their positions. The default for a two-position switch like the arm switch is positive 100 at the position labeled 0 and negative 100 at the position labeled 1. On the rate line of the mix screen, the number on the left is the amount of full travel to apply to the target when the source is in the high position or the 0 position. The number on the right dictates how much to apply when the switch is in the low position or the number 1 position for this two-position switch. To make the arm switch work as planned, note that I plan to use position 1 or down or pull towards me for disarm and position 0 or up as armed. Note also that the default values selected by the group switch are disarmed. This means that the arm switch doesn't need to change aux1 in the disarm position, but it does need to change aux1 by 29 units of the 147 in the armed or up position. 29 is 20% of 147, so the left side rate will be 20% and the right will be 0. And again, that's because in the up position I want it to change, and in the down position I want there to be no modification to aux1. So move the arm switch to its armed position, scroll to the left rate, click, scroll again until you see 20. As you do this, you can notice on the left side of the screen that while you scroll, the output value for GER should change to the value that we calculated earlier. And then click to confirm. Move the arm switch back and forth to verify the output changes the way we want it to. This value at the bottom called switch is on by default, and that's where I'll leave it because I want this mix to always be effective. Some of the other mixes we'll see later will only be conditionally operational, and we'll see how to use this field later, but for now we'll just leave it at on. Now back out of mix 1 and go to mix 2. This will be similar to mix 1, but with some important differences. The source this time is the G switch, a 3-position switch that's in the right hand on the transmitter. Selecting this is similar to picking the C switch for mix 1. As with mix 1, we will select GER as the target. One significant difference here is that I only want switch G to affect aux1 in the flight group because that's the only group that has 3 different modes. So I'll scroll down to the word on next to the word switch. I'll click the wheel to start editing that field, and then I'll flip the D switch to auto-select it, and then I'll click the wheel to confirm that that's the switch I want to use. Notice the 0, 1, and 2 that appear below in little boxes. These boxes represent the 3 switch positions that the D switch can be in. The little tab under the boxes shows the current position of the switch. A box with a dark background indicates that the mix will be effective when the switch is in that position, and a light background says it won't be. Scroll to the boxes to turn them on by clicking the wheel. You can just toggle between on and off as you click. The flight group is in position 1 of switch D, so that's the only one I'm going to select because that's the only one where I want this 3-position flight mode selector to be active. Another important difference here is for mix 1 is that G is a 3-position switch where C is a 2-position switch. What you have to know about that is that the numbers on the rates line still apply to the full high and full low switch positions, and that the center position will apply 0 change to the output. Another difference is the size of the effect that we want when the switch is not in its centered position. The jump between modes is twice as big as the arm-disarm jump, so I'll use 40% on the rate line here instead of 20% like I did with the arm switch. Also, I want both extremes of the switch to change the target output, while in the middle position it leaves aux1 unchanged. So I'll set both rate numbers to 40%. As with the arm switch, I will move the switch to the relevant position while setting the rate so I can verify that the output is affected correctly. After I've entered all the data, I'll move the switches around to verify correct outputs and to verify the mix is only applied in the flight group. While there are 3 modes to choose from in the flight group, there are only 2 in the crash group, so I'm going to use a 2-position switch for that. On the DX6, I'm going to use the one labeled F. Setup is similar to the arm switch in that F is a 2-position, and I only want it to take effect in the up position. But it's also like the 3-position mode switch in that the size of the effect is 40%, and because I only want it to take effect in a single mode group, which in this case is the crash group, with the D switch in the position 0 or up or fully away from me. Once again, after I've entered all the data, I will move the switches to check that they cause the correct output and that they are only effective in the correct mode group. The last mix I want will use aux2 to indicate when the throttle is low so that Betaflight knows when to use air mode and when to turn it off. I'll start mix 4 like all the others, but the source and the target need to be different. The source here is going to be on. You might think that the source should be the throttle stick, and we could do that, but I would prefer to treat the throttle like a switch so the output value will be a specific value instead of moving through a range like it would be if the throttle was the source. On instead acts like a constant 100%, and later I'll set up the throttle stick to be like a switch that will decide when this mix is active. The target here is AX1. This is confusing, of course, because the thing that Spectrum calls AX1 is the 6th channel, which Betaflight calls aux2. Anyway, the target needs to be channel 6 in the DX6, so we're going to use that. It's called AX1. Before setting the rates, I'll scroll down to the switch line and click on and move the throttle stick to select the throttle stick instead of on as the switch. Taken as a 3-position switch, the throttle stick will be in 0 position in the low power range. 1 is the middle power range, and then 2 is the high range. The purpose of this mix is to turn air mode off except when it's really needed. At high power, it doesn't make much difference, and the downsides of air mode occur mostly in the mid power range. So I'll highlight 1 and 2 to make this mix override air mode at those higher power settings, while leaving it on at the low power setting where it's needed the most. In order to set the rate, notice that channel 6 rests at -147 because it's connected to a push button. Positive 147 is the pre-arm signal with that button pushed. So I'm going to have the mix drive the output to 0, sort of a middle number, which will give Betaflight the override air mode message. As a final test, I'll move the throttle stick throughout its entire range and make sure that channel 6 is only at -147 in low power settings and that it's at a 0 or middle value at the mid and high throttle settings.